All right, let's tackle one of the biggest questions in finance right now. What is gold's next move? I mean, after that massive run-up, everybody wants to know if the rally can actually last. So we've gone ahead and distilled the latest reports from the world's biggest banks to give you a clear look at their forecasts.
Okay, let's just dive right in. This is the big one, isn't it? After such a remarkable run, the entire market is kind of holding its breath, waiting to see if this momentum can keep going. And, it turns out the heavy hitters on Wall Street have some very, very strong opinions on this.
So first up, the main story coming from the major financial institutions is, well, it's overwhelmingly positive. Across the board, they're really seeing a clear path up for the precious metal.
And that's really the headline right there. When you sift through the reports from the big players, the general agreement is that gold is set to keep on climbing. And we're not just talking about one or two optimistic analysts here. This is a pretty broad consensus.
So, why are they so bullish? Well, it really boils down to these two key economic drivers. First, the market is pretty much banking on the US cutting interest rates. And second, bond yields are expected to keep falling. Now, what's so interesting is how these two things work together. See, when interest rates and bond yields go down, holding an asset like gold, which doesn't pay any interest, becomes a whole lot more attractive in comparison.
Okay, so that's the theory, but let's get to the exciting part, right? The numbers. If this whole optimistic scenario plays out, what specific price levels are these institutions actually looking at?
First up, you've got powerhouses like JPMorgan and Goldman Sachs suggesting that gold could test that 3650 mark. Now, that alone is a pretty significant milestone that they see just over the horizon. But they don't even stop there. The higher end of their forecast pushes all the way up to 3700. A move like that would signal some serious conviction that this rally still has a lot of powerful momentum left in it.
It's a really compelling story for sure. But, in the financial markets, nothing is ever a straight line. So we have to ask the big question. Is this upward march a done deal, or could there be a plot twist just around the corner?
Right, because every single forecast has to account for risk. And analysts are keeping a very close eye on one major factor, a factor that could throw a wrench in this whole bullish outlook.
And there it is, the one word that could change the entire story: inflation. To be specific, the risk is that U.S. inflation data comes in hotter than everyone is expecting. That's the number one threat to this whole golden forecast.
And this is where we get a really crucial counterpoint. Analysts over at Oppenheimer are sounding a bit of a warning bell. They're basically arguing that if inflation proves to be stubborn and just stays high, it could force a pullback, or what they call corrective pressure, on the price of gold.
So we've got the bull case, which is all about those interest rate hopes, and then we have the bear case, which is driven by inflation fears. To make sense of it all, we can actually boil it down to a few critical price levels that will tell us which story is winning out.
Yeah, you can almost think of the gold market as a tug of war between these two powerful forces, and the price action itself is what's going to show us which side is pulling harder. And this really brings the entire conflict down to just two numbers. At the top, you've got the bullish ceiling at 3,700. That's the prize the bulls are fighting for. And then below that, you have the critical floor at 3,520. This is the key support level that the market absolutely needs to hold.
So here's the key takeaway. For the bulls to stay in control, the price needs to stay above that 3,520 support level. Simple as that. If it breaks below that floor, well, that's a pretty strong signal that Oppenheimer's inflation fears are starting to come true and take over the market story.
So, in the end, it all comes down to this classic economic showdown. Will the dream of lower interest rates be enough to push gold up towards that $3,700 target? Or is stubborn inflation going to win the day and trigger a correction? That right there is the question that's going to define gold's next big move.